Reports indicate that Democrats may finally have heard the message that Republicans in both chambers of Congress will not approve any more spending for Ukraine until first passing legislation to secure our southern border. And with the Christmas recess approaching, the Biden administration is possibly showing a willingness to resolve the stalemate by working on an agreement to tighten border security and reform the asylum process. Well, could we see a deal before next year? I kind of doubt it, but maybe so. Joining me now to discuss this is Congressman Matt Rosendale. He serves on the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, as well as the Committee on Natural Resources. He represents the 2nd District of Montana. Congressman Rosendale, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to see you.
Merry Christmas, Jody.
Merry Christmas to you as well. All right, we've just got a few minutes, so let's jump into this. First, hats off to both the House and the Senate Republicans for standing firm on this issue. No more funding for Ukraine until we secure the southern border. Do you think the Democrats are getting the message finally?
I think that the Democrats have actually, a few of them have joined us, and we have to make sure that the president understands it. I mean, I've taken it a step farther, Jody. I introduced legislation last Congress and again this Congress, Secure America's Borders First Act, to put into law, we don't send money to Ukraine until we have operational control and have secured our own southern border. So I think they're starting to get the message.
Well, you know, one of the ways that you and I both, I mean, many of us who serve there, you start figuring out that you're making progress based upon the talking points that the left is putting out. And they're coming out with all sorts of talking points opposing any kind of deal, which that in itself means to me there's some progress being made. So, look, we have reports that perhaps the White House is moving in your direction. And that's great news. Do you think the extreme left, however, in the Democratic Party will allow President Biden to go as far as he needs to go in order to reach an agreement?
No, I do not. And this is what everyone has to be very cognizant of and very careful of, because we know that President Biden will make a lot of promises and try to direct money to the southern border. But there's a very, very big difference between making promises, sending money to the southern border that would merely be used for housing and social support, social network for illegals, thereby exasperating the situation, encouraging more people to come and think that that is going to be the tool that they're going to use to coerce the conservatives to send more money to Ukraine. There's going to have to be a secure southern border before we will sign off for any funding, even consider any funding going to Ukraine. And before that happens, we also have to see the mission, the goals that they plan to achieve in Ukraine, and have a good accounting of what those dollars are going to be used for, none of which has been done to this date.
Yeah, great point. I mean, there are multiple sides to this whole argument. There is the lack of a mission, as you just brought up. There's the lack of our own border being secure. And what business do we have securing other borders of other countries when we refuse to secure our own border? But let me ask you this. There is also the argument on this whole thing that enough is enough. How much money? What, $113 billion that we've already given Ukraine? At what point is enough for our giving money to Ukraine? I'm sure there probably is some discussion about this among some of your colleagues.
There is, and again, I won't even begin to have the conversation until our southern border is secure, until we have operational control over it, until the border wall system has been completed, and the fiber optics in the ground and the camera systems and the roads that parallel that wall are put into place, and we start implementing the Remain in Mexico policy and absolutely enforce the true purpose for the asylum status that a lot of people are claiming. I won't even begin to have the conversation. And then the American people have to ask themselves, do you want to borrow more money from China and obligate us for that debt and then give it to Ukraine? that's a serious conversation that people have to have. So I'm just saying I won't even begin to have the conversation until our southern border is secured.
So, last question. How likely do you think an agreement can be reached? I mean, before Christmas. Is this something that can happen before Christmas or after?
I do not believe you will have an agreement reached before Christmas. I think that the Biden administration has dug in too hard on a pork-filled supplemental that will try to combine Israel funding, Ukraine funding, disaster relief funding, all into one piece of legislation. And I personally do not think that you will have Speaker Johnson ask the Republicans to fly back to Washington, D.C. To sign off on that. And I would hope that he wouldn't, because I don't intend to.
Yeah, and I think really this puts each of you in a better position to just sit back. It really puts the pressure on the president and the Democrats at this point, and I think that you're right on that. And actually, I think at this point it's probably best to wait until after Christmas. Congressman Matt Rosendale, thank you so much for joining us again on Washington Watch. Wishing you and your family a very Merry Christmas. Thank you for joining us.
God bless you. Merry Christmas, Jody.